Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope that your year has been off to a great start. We're getting close to the end of January, which I know is a time when a lot of us may be forgetting about our resolutions a little bit. So if you started a bullet journal early this year, or maybe you have tried it in the past and weren't able to keep up with it, I just wanted to give you 5 ideas for how to stay on top of that and to stay consistent with your bullet journaling. So let's get started. Number 1, always keep your journal with you. This is my number 1 rule because if you don't bring your journal around with you, you're not going to use it. Just making it a part of your everyday life will remind you to use it more often. And you never know when you'll have 5 minutes just to jot down some of your thoughts or to take a look at what you have planned for the next day or the next week. For example, if you have 5 or 10 minutes while you're at the doctor's office or you're waiting for a friend at a cafe, you can just take out your journal and spend it doodling or writing instead of just scrolling through your phone. Number 2, don't get too caught up in the supplies. This is hard if you're someone like me and you simply love stationery, but really if you're just starting out, having too many choices can make you feel like you can't get started unless you have all the supplies you think you need. Really, when it comes down to it, all you need is a journal and some pens. Really, you can use anything you already have, especially if you're just starting out and you're not sure what journal will work for you. You don't want to go out and spend a ton of money on a journal that works for someone else, but it's just not the right fit. And again, don't get too caught up in the idea that you have to have the perfect supplies, because even having something that doesn't work out the way you want it is valuable information for you in choosing what you don't like in a journal in the future. In the end, there are countless illustrations and different lettering styles that you can do with just a normal pen. So I would start with just your journal, your book, and if you feel like just having fun and buying one thing that can help you decorate your journal really easily and affordably, I would say maybe just pick up a roll or 2 of washi tape. Number 3, practice your pages before or separately in another journal or sketchbook. I know this may seem counterintuitive because it sounds like you're doing more work, but hear me out for a second. I think that this tip applies mostly if you're the type of person who sort of feels paralyzed if you're looking at an empty page and you don't want to mess it up. I am a little bit like this. I think it's just because I am a tad bit of a control freak, but if you're scared of messing up, there's nothing wrong with practicing your pages in another book. So for 2019, I'm using this notebook here, which I'll link in the description box below if you're interested in getting the same one. And I also showed it to you in my setting up your first bullet journal video. And this is the journal that I use day to day. But I actually have this moleskin notebook, and this was my December bullet journal. But since I had a lot of extra room, I actually used this just as a practice journal with all the extra pages. So this is a place for me to do some sketching out of weekly layouts. I don't know if you can see it, but this is an example of how I just sketch it out a little bit before I put it in my own bullet journal, just to get the spacing figured out. And also just to try different layouts to see if I think they'll work for me. I think this is just a great idea. If you have any old notebooks laying around and you kind of use the first few pages but you don't have a use for the rest of it, just you put those pages to use and just use it to sketch out some layouts for your actual bullet journal. I also just have a normal sketch pad. This is like an 8.5 by 11 sketch pad, and I use this to just practice doodles and stuff, because I'm really not that good at illustration, and I usually do have to practice it before I can commit to putting it on my actual bullet journal. And I know on YouTube in these videos where people are showing you how they do their bullet journals, it just looks so perfect because they go right in with a marker and there's no, well, in mine there are pencil lines, but for other people there are no pencil lines and they just go in perfectly and draw it in. But if you feel this anxiety that you're going to mess up, then feel free to sketch it out beforehand on a different piece of paper. You don't have to go right in and get it right on the first try. Number 4, make all your weekly spreads for a month in advance. You'll see this often in my Plan With Me videos, and what I like to do is make all of the month's weekly spreads right at the beginning of the month. I think just because things tend to get busy at the end of the week with the weekend coming up, I usually don't have time to sit down and make next week's spread, so it's really helpful to just go into the next week and know that my spread will already be there waiting for me. And going along with that thought, I also like to stick to the same layout for my weekly spreads each month, and this just takes the guesswork out of having to think of a new layout every week. This also helps me when I'm flipping through my journal so that everything in one month looks cohesive. Number 5. If something's not working, ditch it or change it. Just because a certain type of layout is always on the list of bullet journal spreads you should have, it doesn't mean that you have to have it in your journal. For me, this is something I faced when working on my habit trackers. I started out with the very traditional grid of a habit tracker. This just became too tedious for me because I had to keep track of so many things every day, so it just wasn't very helpful for me. I decided to ditch it for a few months because it just felt like too much work, and I think that your bullet journal should be something fun and not just something you feel like you have to do every day. Then after a few months of taking a break from that, I went back to try to find a different solution that would work for me. The first thing I tried is to turn it into more of an illustration so that it's something fun to look at and not so grid-like. And if you're interested in this particular one, you can see it in my January Plan With Me video, which I'll link in the corner up here. And I think next month I'll even try something different just to see what works for me. Part of this system is just trying new things out and seeing if you like them. So those are my 5 tips for keeping up with your first bullet journal. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again next time.